What do you make of Suella Braverman's letter to Rishi Sunak?
Honestly, I'm just sick of them all. I mean, she should never have been appointed. That is absolutely clear. Some of the accusations that she's making about deals and documents, perhaps, obviously we're going to learn more about that to begin with. But if anyone had any doubts, I mean, a reshuffle is always a little bit of a reset. I think that was the Prime Minister's intent this week. If anyone had any doubt, this government has run out of steam, run out of ideas, just going to fight each other until we get that general election. There's no doubt now, and I think people are genuinely, desperately wanting the chance for them to have their say on the future direction of this country, and they will just look at this and the whole of the political system. They will think, God, what is this when we've got so many important things to be talking about? Is this the way politicians should behave? The
meat of her letter, if you like, is around the PM's immigration strategy, and of course we've got the ruling tomorrow by the Supreme Court on whether the government's plan to deport some migrants to Rwanda is lawful or not. Do you want to see the number of small boats come down?
Yes, we don't want illegal immigration to the UK, but our problem with the Rwanda scheme as put forward has always been that it's just not workable.
Yeah, but at the same time you say that it's not workable, but if the numbers do come down, if the Rwanda scheme is implemented, then you still say that you're going to get rid of it. So it doesn't seem like it is about whether it's workable.
It's a big if it does work.
Okay, if it does,
we haven't. That's like saying if the whole government was suddenly turned to one that was very successful, would we view it differently? I mean, we do not believe it's a deterrent. We don't believe the figures show it has been.
Well, it hasn't started yet. Don't know.
But the government themselves, by claiming it has been a deterrent, by the fact they've put it forward as a plan. But if you look at what they've even said in terms of the numbers it would cover versus the sheer amount of people coming to the country, it's not a viable strategy, and you can't get away from the fact. Rather than these sorts of gimmicks, you need to be able to put the resources into a proper claims system, more capacity, go through those claims. If people should be in this country, great, let's not have them in hotels, let's have them integrated into society, and if they're not entitled to be here, they've got to leave the country. And you've got to address that core failing of the Home Office and the whole government on this issue, and gimmicks will not do that. That's why we believe it's unworkable.
Now, I want to talk to you about the war in the Middle East. Labour's putting forward an amendment on Gaza to vote for. What exactly is it?
Well, the amendment that we will put forward as part of the King's speech will reflect the very detailed position that Keir Starmer put out in his Chatham House speech, which is that we believe a humanitarian pause is essential to get aid into people who need it. There's clearly a humanitarian catastrophe taking place. But that the reason that is a better way to address that catastrophe is it doesn't freeze the conflict, it doesn't ignore the plight of hostages, it doesn't ignore the horrible events of October 7th, and it doesn't take away Israel's right to defend itself.
What's the difference, then, between a humanitarian pause?
I think that's a really important question. A humanitarian pause literally stops the violence to get the quantity of aid in that is necessary. I think everybody wants to see that. A ceasefire would freeze the conflict as it is.
So it's about timing, is that right? Like
I don't think so. No, I don't think so. I think humanitarian pause would have to be long enough to get the quantity of aid in that is necessary. A ceasefire, to me, implies you freeze the conflict as is, the Hamas threat is still there to Israel, the hostages are still there.
It sounds, if you're saying it's not about time frame, sorry, forgive me, it sounds like that's exactly the same.
Well, I really don't believe it is. I think that is why there is so much conversation around
So what specifically is different? Is it the area? Is it like a local area? And if you have humanitarian pause, is it the length of time? What is it?
A humanitarian pause allows the quantity of aid to get in that is necessary.
That doesn't mean anything, does it?
Well, no, I believe it does.
I mean, Gaza gets aid every day,
but it's clearly not getting to people on the scale that it's needed.
So but Gaza it's a cessation of violence has aid coming into it,
around
correct? So I don't understand what that means in practice.
A ceasefire is a freezing of the conflict. The hostages aren't addressed. The terrorist threat to Israel is not removed.
So how do you address the conflict and the hostages in a humanitarian pause?
Well, I believe in a humanitarian pause you get the aid in. It's not going to remove Israel's ability to go in and try and get those hostages. Well, I believe that if you...
Come on, you're dancing on a head.
No, I don't think there is. I think this is why... Let's be clear, humanitarian pause is the only viable vehicle on an international level at the minute that is being...
Sounds like it's just a different word.
Well, people will have their own interpretation of that, but, you know, I think the people who are calling for a ceasefire believe that the terrorist threat will not be removed as a part of that, and I believe a humanitarian pause is about getting the aid in that is necessary, whilst recognising no country could afford for that threat to remain on its border.
An SNP amendment is always also potentially going forward, calling for a ceasefire. If Labour shadow ministers vote for that amendment, will they be sacked?
Well, look, we would expect people to vote for the Labour position. That's why we're putting the Labour position forward. No vote in Parliament is a free vote unless it is announced as such, and there's usually a very specific set of issues that will be around that. Disciplinary issues are obviously for the Chief Whip, they're not for me to announce on television, but we would expect Labour frontbenchers to support the Labour position, which we've clearly put forward, and Keira's given that speech on, and the amendment will reflect, as well as, to be fair...
What happens if they vote for the SNP amendment?
Well, we would not expect any frontbencher to vote for a different political party's amendment to the King's speech. We would expect them to back the Labour position. I believe the majority of people would. Well, it's not for my call to make, but you're right to say there is an expectation of collective responsibility from any political party in the House of Commons.
OK, thank you very much.
Thank you.